Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Hystorians podcast. I'm Des.
And I'm Liz.
And today it is my turn to host the episode, so we are going to be diving in here very shortly. But before we do, we gave Liz a prompt last week, and the prompt was very simple, so that it didn't give away this person's name. But the prompt was Praetorian Guard.
That's it.
That's it. So we're doing an ancient Rome episode, mostly because I'm obsessed.
And she literally is. It's not like when that trend was going on where it was like, guys, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? Desi could honestly say.
Every day.
Every day. Every day, 24/7, 365, okay?
Men, eat your heart out. I am the dream woman. But anyways, so what did you find out about the Praetorian Guard? Because they're going to play an extremely important role in today's podcast.
Okay, well, I was like, this is it? Just, okay, cool. So yeah, I just, inputted Praetorian Guard and kept to the first page, avoided the Star Wars links.
Oops. Not that Praetorian Guard.
You know, and I was like, wow, these guys were badass. And then I was like, Lucasfilm. Oh, shit.
They had lightsabers. Oh my gosh, the Romans were advanced.
I knew
How
it.
do we forget this technology?
Not as cool as aqueducts, though.
Ayo. Or cement.
Yeah, theirs was really cool. Like, did they have self-healing cement? Or
Essentially,
something? Yeah. Oh, amen. Love this shit. Okay, sorry. So they were essentially the escorts for high-ranking political officials, and I just kept on thinking of them as like modern day combination of Secret Service, FBI, and CIA. But like a very rudimentary form of it.
Right. They were essentially the bodyguards.
Yeah.
You know, they were the ones that get the high level job of protecting the emperor.
But also they were like counterintelligence.
Mm-hmm.
They were crowd control. So they were
all
like
very important things that will play into
yeah,
this.
and they were all like always around. If there were politicians, if there were senators and everything, you know, they were
They didn't
present.
bring in the regular soldiers, you know, for this sort of stuff.
And they did military intel. So they were like the highest, or like, you know, like modern day, you rise through the ranks.
Yeah.
They were high ranking.
Yeah.
Like talented.
Yeah.
Recruited. They were elite guards of military leaders and politicians. But that's about it. Also, were those essentially the political leaders of the day were military and politicians. They were the ones who had the most pull, right? Like they were the ruling.
Well, in this situation, the emperor is, of course, at the top of that social pyramid. He's going to be the main person. But there are cases, like with senators would have been the next guys down. Anyone of like patrician class would have probably...
Patricia!
Patricia!
What is the patrician class?
That's the highest class. I mean, right below like the emperor.
Okay.
So...
Alrighty. Well, also the last little things that I want to add from my research reading. It was not really research. It was, ooh.
Well, and that's the point of it. You're just kind of getting a primer to the topic.
They were feared and dreaded by both Roman Senate and the public. They could overthrow an emperor and proclaim a successor. So that was like...
And they have. And then not in this case we're going to be talking about today, but in many cases.
Well, that just shows you how much weight they can throw around.
Right. And there have been a lot of emperors who I don't think took them seriously and they didn't give them the customary raise or anything when they came to power, and then they got taken out. And I'm kind of like, you know what? You kind of pissed off the Praetorians though, and that's kind of what happens.
Exactly. And like, if you piss off those who don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Truly. Like, they were kind of like an underestimated force in a couple different...
They were that quiet, like, boss that you don't know about. You don't know the real leader or anything, and then it's like that
oh, no,
reveal.
No. They were
It's that reveal.
The call was coming from inside the house.
Yeah. Already.
Well, so now that we have this general understanding about what's going to be a key factor in our person today, drum roll please, this man was at one point probably the second most powerful man in the world. He's described by Tacitus as a heart possessed by towering ambition, and by Velleius as in appearance and lifestyle he is relaxed, but his mind never sleeps. So without any further ado, the topic for today's podcast is going to be none other than Lucius Ælius Sejanus.
Who?
I mean, he's not a super well-known name. I think he should be a household name.
You just said that he's one of the, most powerful rulers.
He was. He's not a ruler, and that's the problem. And also another problem is what happens throughout the story that I have to tell you now.
Girl, let's go.
There's so much.
Spill the tea.
Anyways, if you are a fan of the classics, you will have heard this name before. But for somebody who's just kind of glazed over Roman history and, going through the emperors, he might not have had a passing glance for you. So really, really, such an interesting life and such a tragic tale.
Why would you come after my throat like that about just glazing over the emperors? There's so many. And then they're like, oh, this was the son of this guy 20 people ago. And I'm like, was he?
I have given Liz a copy of the Julio-Claudian family tree, so that she can get a good idea of what we're looking at here. Though you won't see Sejanus on there.
There are symbols on this tree that I've never seen before.
It is a very complicated family tree. It is, it's a family shrubbery. Anyway, so just laying down some laws of the land for this. I know some of you guys are huge, huge history buffs for ancient Rome. And I respect that. I get it. I have researched this to the nines as much as I can. But that being said, this is a fun podcast. This is not, and then so-and-so under the decree. It's not going to be super uptight.
And then he begot Samuel. And then Samuel begot Nathaniel.
Yeah, so a lot of people might come at me and be like, oh, you messed up this, you said it this way. Let's not get hung up on rhetoric. Let's not get hung up on pronunciation. I'm using a very different pronunciation.
We're here
for
the hot goss.
We're here for the hot goss. If you want to listen to somebody like drone on and on about this guy, there's tons of YouTube videos. I've watched them all. And I'll tell you what, they're all very interesting, but this podcast is to make history fun. So we're going to be gossiping about Sejanus. Now, I use a very interesting pronunciation. A lot of people use Sejanus or Sejanus. However, I always thought that Latin didn't have a hard J sound and that it was a Y sound. So instead of Julius Caesar, it's actually Julius. So I will be pronouncing it Sejanus because I felt like that's how I'd been saying it in my head. And whether or not I try and correct myself, it's going to slip out that way. Mm-hmm. So please forgive that.
Honey, you're always forgiven from me. Yeah. But also, this makes me think, and I'm saying it on this recording right now, I have always wanted to do a company that's like, let me bully your baby name.
Yes.
BBN. TM. Copyright.
Yeah, we're taking that
All
one.
rights reserved. And yeah, I mean,
it is a very unique name. So looking at the life of Sejanus, he was born around 20 BCE. His father was L. Seius Strabo, who was born in Volsini, Etrusca, which is modern-day Tuscany. And he actually got to be Praetorian prefect under Augustus. So that's, big in of itself. And then his mother, it is often debated. We don't really know who his mother was, but we're assuming that her name was Unia. And this is because he has an uncle that we can confirm is his uncle, Unius Blasius, and he was a consul. And Sejanus also had a daughter named Unia. So we're just putting this as a placeholder for his mother's name, but we're assuming that that's kind of like, who she was.
Well, he has the uncle, but is the uncle connected to him by his father? No. It seems like no. So it would make sense that it was from his mother's ties. So that's it's
kind of been deduced. I mean,
yeah.
You're going to find a lot of sources in this saying one thing or the other, and you kind of have to, look at their credibility, weigh things out, and kind of go with what you think is the most human path.
Yep.
Looking at their stance in Roman society, they're pretty high up, but they're not as high as they could be. They're part of the equestrian class, and so that is below.
They were horses?
I'm pretty sure it's derived from military, like, you know, the cavalry-esque horse riding. If not, I mean, just shoot me. But you guys in the comments probably will.
Girl, you would have belonged to this class. You were a horse girl through and through.
Truly. So he would have been below the emperor, senators, anybody like super high up in the patrician class, the old money.
Oh, yeah.
Now, but he's higher than the plebeian class. So higher than the freemen. So he's almost there, but just not quite. And eventually he is adopted. This kind of adoption isn't like what our version of adoption is in modern times. It's just something that people did for a multitude of reasons, like financial, generational wealth, you know, building family ties and things. And we believe that he was adopted by an Aelius Gallus, who was also of the equestrian class. There's, you know, debates as to who it was, but he seems to be the most likely because they were in the same class.
Is it essentially like taking as an apprentice or like someone under your wing who you want to take over?
It could be, yeah. A lot of cases it was kind of like that. I mean, you'll see with
it was Augustus, marrying into the family without marrying into the family.
Yeah. In a lot of ways it was like that. It's not like nowadays where it's like, oh, I see you as my child and therefore like you know, we're going to adopt you. I mean, it's kind of, but not really. You know, it was really more about generational and family ties and financial.
I'm sorry.
Political.
My brain just immediately went to like mafia families, you know, how it's like family. Yeah. You are part of that family.
Yeah, even Vinny. That's Vinny.
Yeah.
That's my family.
And even though your last names aren't the same, but like that's who's ruling essentially, but you're part of that family.
Yes. So essentially to get a better understanding of the life of Sejanus and his beginnings, we have to take a look back at the creation of the Praetorian Guard. So it was actually created rather recently in comparison to Sejanus' birth. It was in 27 BCE by Augustus Caesar, and this was following the battle at Actium with Mark Antony and Cleopatra.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So just following that, he decides to create the Praetorian Guard. Granted, don't get me wrong, they've always had bodyguards, but officially. What? What's so funny?
It's like Lincoln, how they, after Lincoln got assassinated, they were like, we should probably establish a secret service. We should probably protect
How dare you be so controversial, yet so true. It was kind of like that. So he creates the Praetorian Guard.
Guys, we fucked up.
And yes. What do they do though? Because this is like a relatively, like the formation of this is a little bit new. So it's kind of debated. Is it a military position? Is it a political position? Honey, it's a little bit of both.
It's
and
muddy.
It evolves. It's muddy and it evolves. And so it starts off very military. You're a bodyguard. You specifically protect the imperial family and the emperor. You know, like that's like your thing.
Yeah.
And eventually it evolves into this political position though, because the Praetorian Guard almost symbolizes power. Because if you're in contact with them, you're in contact with the echelon, upper echelon, the most, you know, the height.
They are
of Roman power.
Symbol.
They essentially become a status symbol. And like you said in your notes, they get their fingers into like everything. Yeah. Like they're seeing how the sausage is made.
They are Big Brother and they are watching you.
Yeah, they're seeing how the sausage is made. And up to 2 BCE, they reported directly to the emperor, which I thought was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Finally, in 2 BCE, Augustus was like, cut that shit. This is too much. He said, I can't. I got too much on my plate and y'all need a boss. That's not me. And so.
And y'all keep on coming in here and yapping that, Claudius.
What do I do?
That Claudius keeps eating your.
Talk to the prefect for Christ's sake. That's what he said.
Eating your lunch from the fucking refrigerator in the break room.
Yeah.
I'm the emperor.
Yeah. So he said, fuck that noise. And he made a position called the Praetorian Prefect. And so this is like the one that essentially is all their boss.
And I think prefects are like, when I hear that word, I think of the most smarmy, like nerdy little things, and I purely blame Harry
you won't
Potter.
Be thinking that after this.
Yeah. Oh, Lord, what?
Well, I'm just gonna say, with this position, it's very difficult. Trust is key. This is the only person standing between the emperor and possible assassination.
Oh.
So when you're picking this person, or actually in most cases, it was two people.
Oh, okay, good.
So when you're picking
accountability.
Yeah. So when you're picking these people, like, you gotta make sure that you choose right.
Question. So there is a very fine line between accountability and like conspiracy. So it's like you want to be on the good side of both of them as the emperor, because that's what I'm thinking. But also, how quick is it that those two have been around each other? It'd be like you and I being, and then we're like, we don't like this bitch anymore.
You're gonna see that that's exactly what happens.
Okay.
So
I am sad.
So essentially, looking at Sejanus's early career, we see that as soon as 1 BCE, so he's about 19, he starts this journey with Gaius Caesar, who is Augustus's son. So that's kind of like a really big job. Like, that's huge for somebody who we previously hadn't heard of. And his dad was still not super high up in the chain of command, though he was, of the equestrian class, and he was, working in a military sense. So there's a lot of question as to how Sejanus got this position. Part of the people are like, oh, Nepo baby. Is he a little Nepo baby with his dad? And I'm like, his dad was high up, but I don't know if he was that high up.
His dad didn't have that pull.
Yeah. Well, the other theory is that there was some seedy dealings going on with a man named Marcus Apicius. And he was a super, super rich guy. He was he had fucking money. And there is a line in Tacitus that suggests that Sejanus perhaps had to forego his virtue for this position.
Oh.
So, that villain origin story, But, granted with our sources, we never can quite tell if this is rumor or if this is truth. It's hard to get truth with a big T with ancient Rome.
And you know what this shows? That politics has never changed.
Somebody always been on their knees to get to the top. So we can't say
usually the men.
Yeah.
Not the women that did come up.
So we can't say for sure that was how he got it, but there's only a few options. I mean, he could have worked his way up at a very young age somehow to be, helping the emperor's son. Or, Nepo baby, or maybe, they greased a few palms.
That wasn't the only thing they were greasing.
Either way, this journey essentially has him go to the Balkans and the Danube, and eventually they end up brokering a deal for Armenia. This was kind of like an emperor in training thing for Gaius, really, so it wasn't a huge deal, but it ended up being pretty worthwhile.
He was the apprentice.
Yeah, so it went well, and, they come back, and not much else is known about Sejanus for quite a few years. I mean, Gaius dies in 4 CE, so he wasn't alive much longer. So any ins that Sejanus could have gotten with the emperor's son kind of died with him, if there were any. Now, we have this long span of time until 14 CE where, we don't have any information on him, but it's generally assumed by, academia that he was gaining military experience at this point. Now, we know that his father became prefect, Praetorian prefect, in 10 CE. So, at that point, he would have a bit of ties, and that's helpful. His father would know people.
So you said earlier that there was usually 2. So was it him and his father at the same time?
You're getting ahead. You're putting the horses in front of the cart.
That's where they're supposed to be.
You're putting Let me get there. So Augustus Caesar dies in 14 CE. And he didn't really have any other options for heirs to give, the position of emperor to. So he's like, Tiberius is my adopted son. Yeah, he's gonna have to be emperor. So Augustus dies, Tiberius becomes emperor, and while it's kind of debated whether or not Tiberius ever really wanted to be emperor, he sure as hell was not keeping around Augustus's old crew to be his crew. Now granted, he did do it very smartly though, migrating people to and from, because he decides to keep Strabo as the Praetorian prefect and then promote his son Sejanus alongside him to have a dual prefect. So in this way, he's keeping Augustus's, wishes. He's
keeping some of the old guard, literally.
Yes. And he also is getting to do, his own thing with a new member of the Praetorian prefect position. So that's, I can see why he would do that. Augustus was the blueprint for emperors. You don't want people to not like you by thinking, oh, out with the old, in with the new. Yeah. They'd be pissed. So I can see why he did that. Anyways, Sejanus is promoted to the position of Praetorian prefect alongside his father in 14 CE. Now, at the same time, as soon as Tiberius became emperor, there were some problems. Problems in Pannonia, which is in modern-day Croatia and a little bit to the west of Hungary.
Oh, I love Croatia.
Right? So, the problems with Pannonia was that the legions were mutinying. And not just in Pannonia, in the Rhine as well. Mm-hmm. So Tiberius has this problem. He's like, what am I going to do about this? This doesn't look good, that I just started my job. And already people hate me. Well, they had good reason to. The legions there, and a legion is about 5,000 troops. The legions there were pissed because, one, there was no great retirement age, and a lot of them had already been surpassing their retirement age, and they were still forced to be there. Mm-hmm. They felt like they weren't being paid enough. And then also part of their reward for being out there in Pannonia was they got land. It was fucking swamp, so not much of a prize. Yeah. Okay, and so they were pissed. And so Tiberius has to think. He's like, "What the hell am I gonna do?" And hey guys, the nation's still in mourning over Augustus.
Hey guys, hey, ruling class, hey, keep those who you rule happy. Make sure that they can retire. Make sure that they can live their lives and be happy.
And those were going to just be his new problems. He hadn't had to experience this before, and now it was actually his circus and his monkeys. No. So he decides, okay, well, I got 2 sons. There's Germanicus, which is his adopted son. Mm-hmm. And then there's Drusus, which is his actual son. And he's like, okay, 2 mutinies, 2 sons. Germanicus, you go to the Rhine. Drusus, shipping your ass to Pannonia.
I was gonna say, Germanicus, I'm guessing, went to the Rhine.
Went to the Rhine. Oh, and Germanicus, oh gosh, what a mensch, but...
Alrighty, we're gonna put him down on the list of possibilities.
Truly. But anyways, so he ends up sending Sejanus with Drusus because Drusus didn't really have a lot of military experience, and so they sent Sejanus as a rector.
I barely know her!
Rector! I barely know her. And the trip has, I don't know if you would call it a success. Nobody really messed up. But, Germanicus certainly had I feel a better story, whereas Drusus was he kind of just showed up and was like, so my daddy said for you to write down what you want and I will tell him. And they're like, he sent his son?
Yeah.
To deal with this, and you're not even going to be able to do anything. You're gonna tell him what we want, right?
I'm surprised they didn't send his head back on a platter or something.
They nearly did. They nearly did. And anyways, but, they end up solving things, or at least quelling them for the moment, and going back safely to Rome. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of Sejanus' first time to prove himself with this. Ultimately, a year later, his father gets promoted to the prefect of Egypt. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge honor. That's the end of the road for equestrian class.
They had a good relationship, or not a good relationship, but they had an established relationship with Egypt. And
right. This was essentially hey, do you want your own micro nation to control?
Yeah.
And so it was a huge honor to be given that. Unfortunately, Strabo would only live another 1 to 2 years. So that is unfortunate. But in the meantime, Sejanus... It's all coming up him. He's the only prefect now of the Praetorian Guard, and Tiberius did not elect another one to fill in, which means he must have trusted him an awful lot. Looking at Sejanus' beginnings as Praetorian prefect, we see a huge evolution of the Guard. So, like we said, it started very military. It's getting very political, though. He has constant access to the emperor now. He's at all of his events. He's with him through every step of the process of ruling this nation. And Sejanus, he's very good at knowing what people want. He sees that Tiberius doesn't really love being emperor. He doesn't love all the tedious little tasks, and he's willing to take over some of these tasks to help him.
I'm helping you.
I'm helping you. So, any sort of boring, I guess, administrative things that he could take over, he
brother,
surely
I
did.
got you. Don't worry,
Yeah.
don't worry. I got this. I'll take care of this.
And so slowly, Tiberius is like shirking off this mantle of responsibility to things that he probably should have, but he just doesn't really want. Another major thing about the political aspects of being in the Praetorian Guard is that they monitored all imperial correspondence. So any letters going to or from Tiberius, he got to see. And if he wanted to. Yeah, it's messy. It's so messy. Oh my gosh. Who would do this? Who would give someone this
I think
power?
that there are conspirators in my realm. And then he's just like, no, there's not. Guess what? This isn't going out.
Well, and here's the thing. Tiberius is a very superstitious and paranoid kind of person. So he's really susceptible to those sorts of things. But what Sejanus does ultimately by doing all these, little bits and pieces coming together is he makes himself indisposable to Tiberius. A couple examples of where he was kind of building up like his rise to power were the riots of 15 CE. Essentially, Tiberius was not really a big fan of all the actors and stuff in Rome, and he lowered the pay of actors, so like in plays and musicals and things like that.
You don't want to do that.
If only SAG-AFTRA had been there.
Truly.
But
where's Fran Drescher?
Where's Fran Drescher? So essentially, and he also reduced the amount of like gladiatorial fights they could have. The people broke out in riots, and the Praetorian Guard was the one to come and help quell the riots. So that was a huge thing. Though it was much to the chagrin of Drusus because he did really favor the actors. He was a little bit of like a cantankerous drunk who liked the gladiatorial fights and stuff. So
the arts is always important.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this kind of begins probably the little bit of beef that Drusus is about to have with Sejanus as well. Though it is very helpful to Tiberius. There's also the fire at the Theater of Pompeii. This is a huge theater that was, very grand and historically important because it's a big monument to Pompey the Great. And a fire broke out, and because of Sejanus and the Praetorian Guard, they were able to act quickly enough and get the fire put out. So he's revered, for saving the theater. And, ultimately this just kind of takes off with his career with Tiberius because Tiberius is like, this man is great. He does everything for me. He's so helpful. He's so useful. Well, that was only the tip of the iceberg to how useful Sejanus could be for Tiberius. And he proves that in the case of Marcus Scribonius Libo. So what happens is, like I said just a few moments ago, Tiberius is a little bit of a paranoid person. He thinks people are conspiring against him, not just in a talking behind closed doors sense, but in a psychic sense.
What, did you just think about me?
No. Prove it. Yeah, so he's a little bit paranoid. And so what happens is Libo is tried for treason, for having using magical forces against Tiberius. I mean, puts Tiberius in a hard spot because he doesn't want to seem crazy. You know what I mean? That this guy is using magic against him. You've been emperor for less than 5 years and you're already killing people for thinking about you.
Weren't they still looking into animals' organs for
auspices? Yeah,
yes,
breeding auspices and haruspices. Haruspices, I think, was that one.
Yeah, for fortune and what's going to happen in the future. They were like,
and he had his own astrologer, Thrasyllus. So he
So why didn't he recruit him to help seed the idea that?
Well, he might have. We just don't know. So the thing with Libo's case is that he's tried, for treason, for using magic against the emperor, and it's not looking too good. I mean, how many people make it out alive from a case against the emperor?
Not a lot. None.
So he asks for an adjournment before they make their verdict, and he's granted it. He goes home. The Praetorian Guard, of course, is there. He goes home, has one last final, super great banquet meal, and then things get a little dodgy. Now, trigger warning, we will be talking about slewer slides.
Well, that's Romans for you.
That's the Romans for you. So it was not uncommon for people to have like do an adjournment and then like kill themselves. And the reason behind that is very simple. I mean, you read all these Roman documents and you're like, man, they were just killing themselves left and right. And there was a good reason. And it was because if you like killed yourself before the verdict was reached, then you like technically weren't guilty and they wouldn't take your estate.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's many cases where they bent the rule on that, but
you were not
usually a guarantee your will would be executed and your family would be okay.
Yeah. And you were not, tried and convicted of your crimes.
Right.
So at that point, so the word of the law says that you were technically innocent. So it was a really early version of innocent until proven guilty in a way.
Right. So, that's very common. However, the story, according to a multitude of sources, is that Sejanus kind of had the Praetorian Guard, intimidate him into, committing suicide.
Before cyberbullying.
They were cyberbullying before cyberbullying, yes.
Yeah.
So anyways, this is important because now Tiberius has this excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And what this does for him is Tiberius gets to look merciful now. He goes and says, oh, well, I wish he didn't kill himself. I would have said he was innocent.
Oh.
So Sejanus made Tiberius look very good. And he made Libo look guilty.
So he was pulling strings and being like, hey, push him to kind of...
Right, and who knows, Tiberius could have asked for this, or Sejanus could have said, I can very easily make this look like he was guilty and that you can just say that we're going to be merciful. So this is kind of like a defining case where Sejanus's Praetorian duties get a little bit more political.
He was showing his allegiances, his how far he was willing to go.
Right. And anything that happens with the Praetorian Guard at this point, you can kind of assume that Sejanus was at the top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in 19 CE, Germanicus dies. And this presents another court case later because it's kind of assumed and very much so agreed upon that he was probably poisoned. He did have some enemies, one of those being Gnaeus Calpurnius Piso. And so people were like, they wanted someone convicted. It was one of those things where like nobody had answered for this. Somebody has to answer for this. Germanicus was like fucking Rome's sweetheart. Like they love him.
They needed a body to strew through the streets, essentially. Yes. They needed someone to take the
L.
Yeah.
And while Sejanus was probably not the only actor in this, he did pull some strings with some friends, particularly Falconius Trio, who acted as an accuser in this case. And, didn't go well for him, as we can assume. So Piso dies for this supposed crime that he was never actually, able to be convinced that he committed. But it just goes to show that the pull with court cases is getting stronger and stronger with Sejanus being involved. And in 20 CE, we have Cassius Dio, who is a historian. He marks 20 CE as being like the most important point as far as like the ascension of Sejanus's power. Like this is where it starts to really take off.
Mm-hmm.
A good example of this being the Ornamenta Praetoria that he was granted. So this is just a huge honor that Tiberius could grant. And he was the first person outside of the imperial family to receive this honor. At this point, he would have had his own place promotion on the palace, in the Palatine.
Oh,
in this place, he would have had his own spot in the palace. So, his own house.
Mm-hmm.
His trust with Tiberius grows so much so that eventually he's even granted for his daughter Unia to be betrothed to Claudius's son. Now, this is the Claudius who will one day be emperor.
It is?
Not the son.
Oh.
Claudius's son. Claudius the emperor. However, this son dies a tragic death.
Ew.
He tosses up a pear and tries to catch it with his mouth and he chokes.
How the hell?
I know. So it was something that was going to happen, but it didn't.
How small were their pears?
I don't know. Maybe it was a chunk of one.
Honey, if it's a pear, just have somebody reach into it.
Kids gonna do stupid stuff. That's history, baby.
There's something called the finger swipe. You put your finger down their throat and you swipe.
Well,
you could have
I'm
saved
sure,
the
I'm sure
the
if
emperor's
you got
son.
a time machine and went back to tell them this, the history of Rome would be very different.
I'm pretty sure they would have killed me really quick.
Maybe we could have avoided. Maybe we could have avoided some terrible emperors. Either way, it shows that his ties were getting stronger and stronger with Tiberius.
Yeah, having your daughter be betrothed to an emperor's son.
Well, he wasn't emperor then.
How was this a power move?
Because he was part of the imperial family still.
Oh, okay. I'm with you. I fell off the back of the wagon.
They're like, no, this one's still good. We didn't throw him off a cliff.
But then I ran, and I'm back on the wagon now with you. I get it. Okay, there we go.
So in 20 CE, what also happens is he gets to the establishment of making the Praetorian camp. Previously, the Praetorian Guard had been spread out across like Roman countryside and around the city, and that was kind of so that people wouldn't think that like somebody had supreme power. Yeah, we're not really hiding under that guise anymore. Now build the camp. How many people can it fit? 15,000. So it could fit 15,000 soldiers, and the building took about 3 years, from 20 to 23 CE. And this was, you know, a big move. I mean, Sejanus pretty much got to oversee this. And one of the things that he does is they adopt the scorpion symbol. Now, you brought this up.
I kept on seeing the scorpion. And as we have established, the person who has the prompt, they stick to the first page, very rudimental, you know, very basic information. So when I was researching, I know that if I was researching to go a little bit further into it, I would have put like, what was the significance of the scorpion? But Desi was like, no!
Yeah, I was like, don't you dare look at that, because I'm going to talk about it. And it's just a mention, but it's something that's really funny, and it's kind of like a kiss-ass moment.
Yeah.
You're not going to believe it.
Tell me, baby.
It was Tiberius's astrology. He's a Scorpio!
No!
Surprise, it's a Scorpio. So
it's always a fucking Scorpio.
So it was something like a kiss-ass kind of move, most likely.
Oh. See, and I thought it was because of
like the sting, the battle.
Well, the battle formation, and I don't know specifically what time period that battle formation was used a lot, but when they put up the shields and then there's spearmen behind them, or pike, but that's further down.
Javelin, yeah.
Yeah. And so it would be you're protecting your first line and second line, and then like the tail of a scorpion, you're stabbing or you're stinging.
See, that would have been
That's what they should have said.
That would have been what a self-respecting prefect would have. No,
seriously. No, it's the love of my
love
life.
Sejanus. Don't get me wrong. That's why I chose him to do.
It's the love of my life sign. What's your sign? I'm going to be a water ram for the rest of our lives.
So essentially, you know, it's like a kiss up move. Yeah. But overall at this time period, he is building wealth and connections. And that's going to be one of the most important parts of the entire freaking hoedown of Sejanus' life. Because he is so close to the emperor, to be close to Sejanus is to be close to the emperor. Mm-hmm. So he's created this kind of funnel of people now regarding him as like this huge well-to-do person.
In order to get to the emperor, you need to be on Sejanus' good side, essentially.
Right. Yeah, and what this is kind of called, it's a system of patronage or amici.
Yeah.
And what that means is, you know, the amici are like, you rub my back, I'll rub yours. That's kind of like the code. It was very important back then, this kind of patronage system, because
cui bono, who benefits?
Yeah. So, you know, it's you really are building upon your network, and he was networked the house down. Everybody wanted to see him. Not only did Tiberius have what was like a morning salutatio, which is kind of like a greeting in the morning you'd have with all your friends where you discuss topics and, you know, their wants and needs and things. But
essentially holding court.
Yeah.
In a way.
Eventually Sejanus would have one as well. He'd be so popular. Mm-hmm. Now, around 21 CE, we have a problem. Tiberius is getting older. People back then didn't live to be super, super old usually. I mean, they could.
Yeah.
But what are the chances? And he's kind of at this point where he needs to decide who's next after me. Mm-hmm. So he, of course, is like, well, you know, I want to be my Drusus. He's heir apparent at this point. And Tiberius is getting tired of being emperor now. It's been a couple years, and he's saying, I'm feeling a little bit sick. I think I'm gonna go to, Capri.
Oh.
He go to Campania. He went to one of those places to rest. A very nice area of Italy.
Oh, he's taking such a big sacrifice. His health is just declining, and he's going to take a sacrifice, and he's going to go to the beautiful island.
Yes. Which, of course, by the way, if any man ever tells you that Tiberius is their favorite emperor, question that. Because he did some debaucherous things on this island. And so...
Oh, I remember you being like, what?
Yeah.
When you were reading this book for the first time.
So, mind you, this episode is not about Tiberius, it's about Sejanus. And
we're adding that to the list.
It's so difficult. I mean, you could do a whole episode on him too. He becomes nearly unreachable at this point. The more he spends time as emperor, the less he wants to do emperor things. And he never really probably wanted to be emperor to begin with. So he used to be a super approachable person. Everyone would say, oh yeah, you can just go right up to him and ask him something and he'll help you. And now, they kind of got to go through a chain of command. And a lot of people, I think it was by 23 CE, you would only reach him by written, maybe it was 25 CE. He's slowly closing himself off to the public, and Sejanus gets to deal with the public.
Oh.
So, there's that. In this ascendancy on Sejanus' side, eventually he gets the honor of being a consul with Tiberius' son Drusus, which is a huge honor, one, to be voted to be a consul, which is, like an elected position that the emperor would give you. And it was kind of kiss-ass ornamental, and you wouldn't even get it for a full year. They'd replace you eventually with other people who needed to get their ass kissed, Yeah. It was kind of like you helped me this one time, so I guess I'll vote you as consul the next time around.
It's literally like that special government employee title right now or whatever.
Yeah. It's very much so where
you only have 160 or 100 whatever days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyways, Drusus and Sejanus are now consuls in 21 CE. That's a big thing that happened for him. It was super cool. Great. He's just getting more and more accolades at this point. However, 2 years later, Drusus and Sejanus got beef. They do not like each other.
What happened?
Well, we don't really exactly know what the true problem probably is, but we do know that Drusus was kind of like an angry drunk and was a little bit of a rascal. And Sejanus also kind of contributed to kind of acting against Drusus's wishes, because Drusus loved the theater and the actors and things. And Sejanus's goal was kind of to do what Tiberius wanted, which was usually to not be good to them. And eventually, they were kicked out of Rome. They weren't allowed to have any.
Yeah, and it's your
gladiatorial contest.
You're around my status, my age, and you are essentially my father's mouthpiece. I don't want you around.
Well, and he was not the kind of person who he was hurting for a rival. He was not, if you think about it, the only people stopping Sejanus from being the absolute closest thing to the emperor is those sons, Germanicus and Drusus. And Germanicus died. Now we've got Drusus.
Oh, so might be a little paranoia, but valid paranoia.
It's going to be valid paranoia, yeah. But you also have to think about Sejanus is that Drusus is his future. Because once Tiberius dies, Drusus is the heir. Sejanus doesn't have an in with Drusus.
Yeah,
so something's got to happen.
Oh.
So in 23 CE, the same year that they break out into this fight, which was quoted in Tacitus as Drusus raised his hand against the favorite and upon a counter demonstration struck him in the face. So Drusus landed the blow on Sejanus. However, Sejanus got the last laugh.
Name out your motherfucking mouth.
Sejanus would always keep someone's wife in his mouth. Because what he did, he was fucking this man's wife.
Seriously?
Well, we think. So, I don't want to be super certain, because there's always yeses and nos in any source for things.
100%, but
the general consensus is that they were boinking. And
so. They were boinking!
So, in 23 CE, Drusus dies of what, is believed and rumored to be poisoning.
Oh no, the only, the only thing in between me and the power trip of being emperor. And oh no.
It suddenly disappeared.
The person I'm Boinking's wife.
Disappeared.
Oh wait, no, the wife I'm Boinking's
husband. Well, here's the thing, is Drusus wasn't a super healthy person to begin with.
Oh.
So it is theorized that he probably died of like a regular medical thing. However, it did suspiciously look like poisoning, and Sejanus was getting it with his wife. So it's one of those things that it's a huge point in Sejanus' career. He's supposedly, working with Livilla, who is, or was, Drusus's wife. And, it's said that he seduced her. Some people say that she loved him. It's kind of odd because Livilla would have no reasoning to be with Sejanus other than love if they were boinking before Drusus died. Because here's the thing. What does Sejanus have to offer her that the future emperor doesn't?
Rock and bod.
Maybe, so it might be one of those things where it was passionate, or it might be something where Drusus dies and now Sejanus is the closest to emperor. And it would be in Livilla's best interest for her son.
Yes.
To,
because adoption was a big thing, and also that might be like, I'm just thinking political, like.
Well, she has a son that's, could be future heir, so that makes
so
it difficult. He wants to be with Livilla. So much so that he divorces his wife Apicata in 23 CE right after Drusus dies. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of suspicious. And of course Apicata goes around calling Livilla a homewrecker, which is hilarious. And also true.
Yeah, literally.
But
there is not a lie in that.
They end up waiting 2 years after Drusus' death because it's very suspicious if they didn't. And Livilla's kind of pestering Sejanus to do this, like, come on, ask Tiberius if you can marry me yet, kind of thing. Because he kind of promised her he would. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of this, like, was it passion? Was it, the convenience thing of like, okay, move it along, like, you're going to be my powerful husband
power is
now.
very persuasive.
Right.
And it will make somebody do many things.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was denied this by Tiberius in no uncertain means. Tiberius let him well know that he was of the equestrian class and that why would Livilla want to lower herself after being wife of the future emperor, to this. So this sucks because not only can Sejanus not get married again to the person he wants to get married to, now that little trust bar with Tiberius kind of just sank down a little lower now. And he's like, oh shit, no, you do still see me as like an equestrian piece of trash.
Yeah. He showed his true colors, essentially.
Yeah, and that sucked. That kind of hurt him a little bit as far as, his career. But overall, the harder thing about this is that Tiberius needs a plan now. Who's going to take over now that his son and his adopted son are both dead?
Yeah.
He says, fuck it, let Germanicus' kid have it. And Germanicus has 3 sons. He has Nero, Drusus, and Caligula.
Jeez!
So, and Caligula's young at this point.
And those are, those names are just...
And
2 out of the 3
and none of them
are just associated.
Nero is not the Nero.
Yes.
So different people. But the Caligula is certainly the Caligula.
Were those before or after these boys? Or these children?
Nero was like a couple emperors after.
Okay.
This was not that same Nero.
Okay.
They all have same names.
The infamous Nero.
The infamous Caligula is this child, though. Oh! So, we know now.
Yeah.
But this is what happened then.
Yes.
Livilla had a son with Drusus named Tiberius Gemellus. And he was too young, though, to be considered for this role. He was in diapers, and a little tot.
Yeah.
So Tiberius is like, okay, well, it's going to have to be Germanicus' kids. Nero or Drusus. They're both old enough that they could be either of them. And Sejanus has another idea, though. He's like, but if it was Tiberius Gemellus, that means that I could become a regent and take care of him with Livilla and raise, essentially, the emperor at the time being.
That's the thing that I was saying earlier about the adoption stuff, since adoption was seen as like a proper way to bring someone into the family and everything. And if you're adopting a well-established or like a child of the grandchild of the emperor, you yourself can become that mouthpiece.
Even
yourself.
you can do that.
Truly. And so that's what I was trying to think of and put into words earlier, because it's like, oh, that's a chess move right there as well.
It is. A lot of this is chess on Sejanus's part.
Mm-hmm.
So because he wants this to happen, he starts scheming.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Tiberius kind of forgets before he leaves again, off to Capri, that to give Nero and Drusus like very solid rights to this.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes it seem like Tiberius doesn't really want them to be the next heirs, but he's, kind of in a hard spot. Sejanus kind of perpetuates this as well and makes it seem like they're not really the choice he wants. And now their mother, whose name was Agrippina, she's on his shit list now.
Oh.
Because, first of all, Tiberius didn't really like Agrippina. She was like a loudmouth. She was always getting her nose into things. She was very political. And she caused problems for him in this sense because Tiberius was not a big fan of women who spoke their mind.
Mm.
But Sejanus, and I love this kind of concept, it's talked about a lot in John McHugh's Sejanus, Regent of Rome, that Sejanus need only but push on open doors.
Ooh!
So he, of course, is like, oh, Tiberius doesn't like Agrippina? I don't like Agrippina. I can make this work.
Yeah.
And so to repair Tiberius's trust, he goes after Agrippina and her friends. So, there starts to be this kind of witch hunt-esque increase of what's called maestas cases, which are treason cases.
Oh.
And so that, there's kind of like an influx of that.
Mm-hmm.
So after these treason cases, and I mean, they were going to pop up throughout our story here, but there is definitely an increase of them. And a lot of them are friends of Agrippina because he's got her on his shit list now. So another thing happens. Tiberius leaves Rome again in 26 CE. He really does not want to be emperor.
He came back to Rome.
Yeah, he came back to Rome
after his son died.
Yeah, and to say that, the next heirs would be Nero and Drusus. Yeah. But anyways, he heads back to Capri after that because he doesn't really want to be there. Nor does he want to be in charge of all this shit. And this time, though, he takes Sejanus with him. On their way down, they go to the villa of Spelunca, which I think is hilarious because of the cave. It's literally a villa with a cave on a cliff.
Like spelunking.
Yeah. And so there's a cave under this cliff, and it's just picture it. No, just kidding. Picture it, Spelunca. It's this beautiful grotto-like cave underneath this cliffside with the ocean. And there's a little bridge to get in there, and it's all lit by lamps with all these beautiful carvings and statues based off of the Odyssey.
Oh my goodness.
It is an aristocrat's delight. It is a beautiful place.
I bet it's just a feast for the eyes.
Well, it's a feast for the eyes and a feast for the stomach because it's where they dined.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
They had a dinner there.
I think I've heard stories about things taking place in Rome in a cave with eels and stuff. That could probably not even apply here, but I'm loving that I know a connection to that.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, just for our listeners, I got really excited about.
So in Spelunca, they had this dinner party. There's servants, there's aristocrats, there's Tiberius and his imperial party that he's decided, he wants to go to Capri with. What happens is they go to have this dinner party and the cave crashes in. It kills a number of slaves and servants and people, serving the aristocrats. Once the dust clears, Sejanus is hunched over Tiberius, protecting him from the falling rocks. So Tiberius's trust in Sejanus just got promoted back up.
Oh, so I fully was expecting Tiberius to be like, even though Sejanus had covered him or something, Tiberius somehow died still.
No.
He died from
there was much more to Tiberius's story.
Okay.
So, Sejanus's trust is restored now, with Tiberius because he saved his life.
Mm-hmm.
And which, is kind of his job.
Yeah, literally.
But, it's really cool when something like that happens and you're like, oh my gosh. So everybody, it's great PR for him, I guess,
Well, you're in a life debt.
Yes. Well, while they're away doesn't mean that Sejanus doesn't know what's happening in Rome. He has the Praetorian Guard under his thumb, and eavesdropping on Agrippina and her sons. And now, because everyone's married to everyone else, Livilla has a daughter as well, and she's actually married to Agrippina's son Nero. So there's all those family ties where, because Sejanus is like getting it on with Livilla, that Livilla is willing probably to have her daughter do some espionage as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So there's a lot of different, routes.
It's a house of cards.
It's a house of cards. Yeah, it's really
people have never changed.
People have never changed, and so this eavesdropping does not bear a lot of fruit. They can't really find a lot on them, so that's kind of a bummer for Sejanus. But in 27 CE, Tiberius has to rush back to Rome temporarily. There are a couple of fires that outbroke, and there was just a lot of natural disaster kind of things happening. And then my personal favorite is the Colosseum story. So what happened? You will find this in like so many different ancient Roman texts that this must have been the news of the day that this happened. Essentially, a freedman had made a theater outside of Rome because they weren't allowed to have, Colosseum-like actors and gladiatorial fights in Rome at that point. He made his own outside of Rome. And, oh my gosh, he built it really shitty, and it collapsed, killing 20 to 50,000 people.
Holy crap!
And you will hear every single text bitch about this. It's like the guy with the copper. It's like the Ain
Dude, that's so, yes, 100%, but also that's so many people.
Back then, that was a shit ton of people.
Dude, 9/11 was 3,000.
Yeah.
That was world changing.
Yes. And so anyway, so this guy makes a big fuck up. So Tiberius is like, God, why can't people just not die? So he heads back to Rome temporarily to deal with this. So Sejanus decides, you know what? I bet Drusus Jr. would really be a good pawn in this. And he recruits Drusus, the younger, to essentially get rid of Nero, the older brother. Because he tells Drusus, he's like, well, what's in the way between you and the throne? Your brother. And Drusus was the jealous type.
Oh my gosh, just pulling little strings.
All he had to do was push on open doors.
Truly? Oh my gosh.
And so what he ends up getting done is that he successfully gets Nero snubbed socially. And this works out for a lot of reasons. I mean, people really didn't think that Tiberius was like that cool with them. So he's able to successfully get Nero snubbed, where they make fun of him in the streets and, just embarrass the house down.
We need to bring back embarrassing them in the streets.
Yes,
when they appear, start booing.
Along with this, Sejanus, goes after a lot of Agrippina's friends. And one of my favorite cases is the case of Titus Sabinus, or Sabinus. And essentially what happens is 4 ex-praetors, they kind of wanted to gain Sejanus's favor, and they knew that he was fucking with Agrippina's friends. So one of them goes to Sabinus and says, hey, like, you should totally come over to my place and stuff. Like, we should just talk. And they have him come over. 3 of them are up in the attic listening. And the one guy who's talking to him, which I believe was Latirius, that's probably completely wrong, but you know what I mean. He encourages him to speak freely. And Sabinus goes off talking about how Sejanus is terrible, and even Tiberius did not escape persecution from in this talk.
He thought that he was just having a little yap session. He thought he was having a
brewski yap session with the boys.
Literally.
And he got so wronged. So this, of course, creates his court case, for bad-mouthing the emperor and Sejanus.
Essentially, what's the word?
Defamation.
Defamation, yeah. Thank you.
And essentially, it's a really sad story. I mean, he gets the whole 9 yards as far as capital punishment goes. He gets thrown down the Gemonian Stairs, which is, they're the stairs on the hill to the Capitoline.
So they just tossed him?
Well, after they kill him.
Oh.
Because here's the important thing about the Gemonian Stairs. It was considered like the most capital punishment, worst thing you could do to somebody, because the Romans believed that whatever happened to the body, you got in death. So if you were tossed down the stairs in your afterlife, you would look like you've been through it.
Yeah.
He gets tossed down the stairs and thrown into the Tiber River after they drag his body on a meat hook through the town. And the worst thing about all this is the whole time.
Not the meat hook?
No. The whole time, his dog followed him and jumped into the river. I'm so sorry. I had to bring the dog into it.
No!
It's just a cool note. The dog was so loyal. The dog was so loyal to him that it followed him through all of this.
Why didn't that dog tell him to shut the fuck up? And tell him that there were 3 guys in the attic?
If only animals could talk. So
my dog would have told me.
So this is one of my favorite cases because it's kind of crazy like that.
That's insane, and now I'm crying.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just thought it was a fun tidbit.
It is! That's the tidbits that I love.
Anyways, after this, looking more towards 29 CE, Sejanus' honors get increased. They start to celebrate his birthday.
Oh.
So that's, pretty big.
Yes.
Also, eventually he's able to get Nero exiled to the Isle of Pontia and Agrippina exiled to Pandateria. So this happens, it's one of those things where people didn't really think that Tiberius was really into Nero, so it kind of, people assume a lot that if Sejanus says it goes, that Tiberius said it goes.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case. Sejanus kind of riffs.
Yeah.
Off of what he.
Oh yeah, definitely. Tiberius definitely would support this. Oh yeah, I was talking about it like the other day with him. He's totally supportive of this.
Yeah, and he's finally able to get them on like trumped up charges, essentially, of having pretty much weird sexual preferences, which essentially I think it's because they thought like Nero was sleeping with a dude, which back then wasn't like a big problem, but like I feel like he got him on trumped up charges essentially.
Yeah. Since when have the Romans cared what the politicians, what the leaders, and who the leaders are doing?
Truly. Anyways, Drusus Jr. is now heir, and Sejanus has 2 options. He can, 1, make Drusus beholden to him, be like, hey, I got you here, so what are you gonna do for me? Or, number 2, he can just undermine him. And Sejanus, he chooses to undermine him.
Oh!
By the way, Drusus has no idea that he's pointing his mom. We assume that he has no idea at this point. He knows that Sejanus probably wants a snap at the power, but he has no idea that him and Livilla are getting it.
I thought that they were together now. Didn't he leave his wife?
It has to be under wraps though. Nobody can know. If somebody were to find out that he asked to marry her and he got denied, he would be laughable.
Yeah, laughing stock. Okay.
So it's all under wraps at this point. Now by 30
they're just good friends. And they're roommates.
And they were roommates. By 30 CE, the Senate is essentially under Sejanus' thumb. As Cassius Dio states, the Senate was pretty much under his control, partly by the benefits he conferred, partly by the hopes he inspired, and partly by intimidation. So this was super embarrassing as well for the Senate, that they're pretty much being bossed around by this equestrian class bitch.
Yeah.
So that in itself fosters, some hatred. You were you either were with them or you wanted to be. And eventually, Sejanus is able to get Drusus Jr. charged with what's called a succession of calumnies. Now, we don't really know exactly what he was charged with or how he was able to get this. This is kind of one of those things lost to history.
I feel like that would be the title of my biography, where it's
like a succession of calamities.
No, but the way that my brain read it was a succession of calamities.
That's essentially what it is. It's just going by whatever the book called
it. I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
So instead of killing or exiling Drusus, they have him put into the prison under the palace. So he's kept, in like a regular confinement.
Throw him in the dungeon.
In the dungeon, exactly. So now we're down to the heirs being Caligula and Tiberius Gemellus. This means that Sejanus' chances of being a regent are getting higher and higher, but still not quite there. Now, he is still super favored to Tiberius, though, and he's eventually elected as joint consul with Tiberius himself. This is a huge fucking honor. You get to be consul with the emperor. That's the emperor essentially saying, hey man, I view us as almost equal.
Oh, yeah, that would be...
It's a little bit of a mind fuck. Now, granted, back then, did people think that Sejanus was as equal as the emperor? Probably not. But they knew that to get close to Sejanus was to get close to the emperor, and he was the closest thing below the emperor.
If you were close with Sejanus, you had the emperor's ear, essentially.
Exactly. So,
and his right hand.
Exactly. Yeah. So Sejanus ends up going back to Rome to accept this honor, of being a consul. And Tiberius, says, hey, I'm not feeling great. Go ahead without me. Love you, brother. He gives him a big embrace and he's like,
I'm going to sacrifice and stay here on Capri.
Yeah, exactly. Tiberius, how many times this man just want to fucking retire? Is how I think when I read through Tacitus and stuff. I'm like, man, he really just wanted to retire.
Let this man retire.
So what happens is Sejanus goes back to Rome. He has this grand reception. He's actually now allowed to receive what's called the Aventus, which is this grand reception when you come back that people are they meet you out on the road and they're like, yay, you're back. Oh. Yeah. So, which is usually only the emperors or imperial families. So kind of a big deal. And he has his own salutatio, which is, where people would a reception where people would come in. He did have these previously, but he had a huge one before his debut as consul.
This is insane.
The reception was so fucking big that it is written down in history that they broke his couch. So many people were trying to sit on his couch that they broke it. It also said that there was a weasel that ran through, which was supposed to be an omen of bad luck. So that take with a grain of salt, but I
think the couch breaking would be a bad luck.
That would be an
omen of bad luck too.
There was a lot of things that kind of, hinted towards that. Let's just say that some questionable actions follow once that Sejanus is back home in Rome.
Okay.
Now, one of the things is that he tries getting with Livilla on a more public level. Now, I will say this to you, dear listener. The sources are so confusing on this. Either he was not allowed to be with her and he was still trying to get it, or he was now formally engaged to her. Some people say that Tiberius now lets him engage with her, but they're not married yet.
Yeah.
I don't think they ever formally get married, but he's allowed to say so things are now out with them, whereas they were kept secret. Yeah. Either way, the cat's out of the bag now. But the worst part of this is Sejanus makes some really questionable choices for his consulship speech. Now imagine it. The morning is glorious. He has this huge salutatio. He dons consular clothing instead of his usual Praetorian garb. Oh. They sacrifice a white bull. The auspices are red. And he's carried around on an ivory chair to this speech.
Oh, it's the perfect day.
It is his moment. It's all about him. He gets up on stage to talk to the people and address the people. And that's where things start to go a little bit weird. Instead of saying hey, thanks for, this honor, I hope to do well, he asks for a vote of the people. Oh. Now, this is a problem. This is not the Republic anymore. We have an emperor. There is no people and magistrates voting for you. For him to suggest this is kind of weird, and it almost undermines Tiberius's reign.
It's a little insurrection-y.
It's a little insurrection-y, okay? It's weird. And he goes as far as to have this whole thing on the Aventine Hill, which is also known as being an insurrection kind of place. Yeah. So it reads bad. We don't know why he chose to say this. It's in bad taste. Maybe he wanted to seem as a man of the people. Mm-hmm. But either way, word gets back to Tiberius.
Oh.
Now, and it comes from an interesting place.
And it's not filtered word?
It's not filtered word. Because this letter was sent specifically from Antonia's slave Pallas as to avoid the regular chain of events where it goes to the Praetorians. Mm-hmm. Antonia is Tiberius's sister-in-law, and he actually really likes her. She's a very demure woman who keeps in her place. Yeah. And therefore he takes her word. Yeah. Because she doesn't usually deal in these.
He respects her because she fits the mold of what he expects from a woman.
Amen. And a man. So he gets this letter, and Antonia's kind of hey, Sejanus is saying some really weird things and doing weird things. You might want to get a check on
And
that.
I quote, I want the vote from the people. Hey, Emperor, what the hell?
It's just all very questionable. I mean, it's not a good look for Sejanus at this point. And this ends up being what I like to call the beginning of the end. So, May 8th, 31 CE, Sejanus's and Tiberius's consulship ends so that they can give it to, other people.
Mm-hmm.
And Tiberius, it's normal for them to be awarded like other honors after the consulship. So Tiberius awards Sejanus with a priesthood, but he doesn't give him the Tribunicia Potestas. And the Tribunicia Potestas was tribunician powers.
Okay.
Which is
like
kind
tribunal?
Yes. Which is kind of normal to give someone if you, are going to give them all the power. Mm-hmm. And Sejanus is kind of like, that's weird. That's strange. I guess, it's still cool though. Anyways, can I come back to Capri and hang with you? And Tiberius says, no.
Oh, he's snubbing him.
Well, Tiberius just kind of makes it seem like, I'm getting better and I'm going to come back to Rome. So don't worry about leaving. You stay right there. And then, so Sejanus is like, well, can I go see La Villa who's sick? And he's like, no. I need you right there because I'm going to be there soon.
Because it's like, well, Tiberius is essentially like, I need to show him where his place is.
Not even just place. Tiberius needs to buy himself time because he's going to have to start restructuring things after this happens. So Sejanus goes on the offensive. He's like, okay, well, that's weird, but like, I still need to like take some of these guys out before I have a clear path to either regent or emperor. We don't really think that Sejanus wanted to be emperor, but we think that he wanted to be regent.
Yeah.
Like to have that
He was
power.
realistic with
He was realistic, but there's still people in his way. So he essentially, forces Nero, who's now being exiled, on Pontia. He's hanging out there. Sejanus sends an executioner with a noose and a hook, essentially being like, hey, we're here for you. And Nero preemptively kills himself because he thinks that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't call Sejanus's bluff.
No.
Anyway, so this is kind of Sejanus's fault, and Tiberius was not happy about it. He's like, I didn't tell you could kill my son, my adopted grandson.
Yeah.
I didn't say you could do that. And Tiberius is like, this is the last straw. I need to start thinking about how I want to go about this. He ends up keeping pretty much all of Rome on their toes because he's not really sure how people will feel about this. Sejanus is so powerful that Tiberius is not convinced that the Senate would ever actually convict him at this point. So he needs to test the Senate and the people of Rome. What's going to happen if I do something about this? And he starts sending mixed messages. 1 minute he's like sick, 1 minute he's well, 1 minute he's praising Sejanus, 1 minute he's saying, he needs to be taken down a few notches. And he kind of gauges things. And he also restructures his own personal guard because think about it. While Tiberius is on the island of Capri, he's surrounded by Sejanus's guys.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
The roots go so deep into this.
Yeah.
He's surrounded by people
connection just happened for me.
That are controlled by Sejanus.
Yeah.
So he has to restructure things. And to do this, he appoints, Lord help me now while I say this, Q, which I'm assuming stands for Quintus, Navius Cordus Sutorius Macro. I will just be calling him Macro.
Thank you.
He appoints Macro, who was previously the prefect of the Vigiles, which is like the night guard essentially. Like sometimes they were firefighters, sometimes they're like night watch. Okay. He promotes him to Praetorian prefect and he gives him a royal decree saying, that this is how we're going to do it. And Tiberius makes a plan. He's smart about this plan, but there's two things that this plan is resting on. One, the element of surprise, and two, how the Praetorian Guard is going to react. Because this could be, extremely problematic. So he covers his ass. He pays off the guards, and he has a backup plan. Now the backup plan is fucking hilarious. It's essentially like to release Drusus from prison under the palace, and they're just hoping he's gonna go berserker on him. I think
he's been working out this whole time. He's been lifting stones. He's been doing chin-ups.
I mean, they're hoping that will rally the people.
We gotta make sure it happens on a full moon. He will become his full werewolf self.
Truly. I mean, I'm sure there was more nuances to the plan, but essentially, they're hoping that people rally around Drusus. Yeah, that he's pissed off and wants revenge.
I love it.
So, what happens is, Tiberius puts out a rumor and says essentially to the Senate that Sejanus is finally going to receive the tribunician powers.
Wow.
Super exciting. Sejanus is like, oh, whew.
Finally.
Great. This is so great for me.
Yep.
And so on October 17th, Macro enters Rome, armed only with his letters from Tiberius. The consul of the time was then Regulus, and he announces that there's going to be a meeting for Sejanus to receive this honor. And the location of this meeting is going to be key because it's on the Palatine Hill. So the location is key because it's close enough to the palace to let Drusus out, but it's also far away from the Praetorian Guard's encampment. So they don't have as much time to react if things go south.
Mm.
So it goes about, Sejanus attends his morning salutatio with the senators. They have like this great time. And they're like, oh, congrats. We can't wait to give this to you. Like, woohoo. Meanwhile, Macro kind of, is planning.
Mm-hmm.
And Sejanus walks to the hill. He's about to enter the forum and he sees Macro and he goes, weren't you in Capri? Why are you here? That's weird.
Hey, buddy.
What's going on? And Macro goes, oh man, no worries. I'm here because Tiberius couldn't make it. He wanted me to congratulate you and just, say he's so proud of you, pats him on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And Sejanus goes in and is like, okay.
He put a kick me sign on his back, didn't he?
Macro begins to start his job that he's really there for.
Mm-hmm.
He goes up to all the guards in the forum, shows him his royal decree.
Yep.
They accept it. And then the decree says he is now the new Praetorian prefect. He sends the guards back. He sends all the guards home back to the encampment, says bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes in and he delivers a letter to Regulus, the letter from Tiberius, to give him their tribunician powers. Now, Sejanus wouldn't be suspecting anything at this point because somebody has to come in and deliver the letter to give him the powers. So they open the letter. And to quote Juvenal, a historian, it is described as an enormously wordy letter. It went on and on and on. And 1 minute it was praising Sejanus, 1 minute it was denouncing him. It was so wishy-washy until finally...
It's up for interpretation.
Yes. Until finally they get to the letter's end. And it says that these two senators need to be punished for dealing with Sejanus, and also something needs to be done about Sejanus. You're placed into custody.
Oh, what?
Sejanus flabbergasted. Everyone in attendance starts to look at him and starts to look at their neighbor, and it's quiet.
I just know his ears are ringing, his face is hot.
And all the senators start to look around and start to back away from him. They don't even want to be associated. They don't want anywhere near this. And Sejanus is dumbfounded. He's like, if there was one moment in history where I could time travel back to watch, I want to see this moment.
You want to see his face.
At one point, supposedly they call him forth to talk to him, and he's like, me? Like, he's like...
I don't know who this person is.
He is he is so surprised.
Mm-hmm. Literally dumbfounded. He was found not able to speak.
Yeah. The Senate, of course, eventually breaks into applause that, yay, he's been detained. They detain him and they take him away. Meanwhile, everybody is gathered in the streets because it's kind of, the word has spread around.
Yes.
That
something big is happening.
So he's detained, dragged through the streets, and taunted. He's thrown into the carcer. So it's kind of like a holding cell while you're awaiting your trial. Mm-hmm. And so the senators meet at the Temple of Concord, and they essentially await, Tiberius's word that it's okay to do whatever with him. And they decide that Sejanus has to be put to death. Not only does he have to be put to death, he will undergo what is called his damnatio memoriae. And what that means is that all evidence of his life is to be erased.
And that means that in the afterlife, that's another kick in the afterlife.
People start tearing down his statues. There were statues to him at this point. I mean, he was celebrating. Yeah. His birthday was a holiday.
And this was all happening while he was still alive.
Yes.
So he got to witness, when he was being dragged through the streets, he was witnessing people toppling his statues. Yeah.
So he was seeing the beginning of it. They took his name off of coins. They took all his I don't think we have a statue of him, actually. We have a coin that we found. Oh. But everything about him is destroyed by the public. And what happens is he receives, the most capital punishment that they had at that time of the day. He was taken down to the Tullianum. which was essentially a 12-foot shithole that you did not come back from. It was a pit underneath the prison that pretty much just, you went there to die in your own filth.
It was an oubliette.
Yeah.
A place to put people to forget them.
Yeah.
Labyrinth friends.
He's taken down there. He's garroted.
Oh, wow. Oh, so
that's the typical death.
Yeah.
That, yeah. Typical death for treasoners and things like that. His body is tossed down the Gemonian Stairs and left to rot and be defaced by the public for 3 days.
Oh my gosh. So just his corpse at the bottom of the stairs.
Yes. For 3 days.
So,
and people would come up to him and deface him and kick him and whatever.
So I want to make sure that listeners understand how big this is, because as you said earlier, what happens to you, to your body after
also
you've died,
happens in death.
So he gets to, in their minds, he is also witnessing and getting to be punished by the public as well for those 3 days as well.
Right. And also to have it be rotting.
Yeah.
And, it's hot there. It's not, like a cold, day where it's going to be preserved well. So they get thrown down the stairs, left for 3 days to be defaced. Mm-hmm. His body is then, what's left of it, put on a hook, dragged through the town, and tossed into the Tiber River. So this is, par for the course for most, treasoners. But the damnatio memore is kind of, going above and beyond. Now, I want you to imagine all the people. There was not a person in this city that didn't know who he was. And there was not a noble who didn't shake hands with him.
Yeah.
His amici were shitting bricks.
Oh, I bet.
If this is what happened to him, what's going to happen to us?
I wonder how many people fled. Were they able to?
Well, there is a couple people who tried to hide. What they mostly tried to do was try to convince people that they weren't associated. Yeah. And the witch hunt begins. Sejanus's life didn't end at the end of his life.
He was kicked and shit and rotted.
He drug so many people down with him.
Oh.
That it is this huge witch hunt. First of all, there's the senatorial decree that there's no mourning allowed. You cannot cry over him, and you cannot cry over anybody who was condemned of fraternizing with him.
Oh, wow.
So that, creates a huge problem. Now, a lot of people want to know about his family's fate, and honestly, they did kill his oldest son first, after they found him hiding in someone's garden.
He was just trying to take a stroll.
He was trying to hide, and it was a friend of Sejanus who hit him. But people wonder why, wasn't his family killed right away?
Why would you hide out in the garden of somebody who's also wanted?
People are just dumb.
Okay, thank you.
The rest of his family wasn't killed till later. So Apicata, his ex-wife, kind of wrote a letter to Tiberius saying, hey, just so you know, Livilla is a homewrecker, and also she totally helped kill Drusus with the poisoning. And Tiberius was not, super receptive to that letter and had her children killed.
Okay, I was about to say, did she also die? Because it's essentially admitting that she knew about it and stuff.
Well, he killed her 2 young children first. The one was old enough to know what was going on. The other one was a little girl who, the whole time being drugged to get garroted, was like, what'd I do wrong?
Oh, baby.
It gets worse. I don't want to tell you what happens to her. Terrible, terrible things happen to her. And they're killed. They're, tossed down the stairs as well. And Apicata commits suicide after this.
Understandably.
So, yeah, some people there's, surprisingly, you say it's understandable, but there's very much historical debate on whether, why she did it. And, she just watched all of her children get killed.
And either she was going to die by her own hand or probably witness a worse fate for herself.
Yeah. And eventually, Livilla also, it's debated whether she commits suicide or was killed, or if her mother starves her, for being, a bad person. It's up in the air. There's so many up in the air things with this case because it's so long ago. But the main thing is that Sejanus's amici are shitting bricks. And here's the thing. A lot of people of the equestrian class get killed. Not a lot of nobles get killed until later. Mm-hmm. A reason for this, too, is that Macro ends up teaming up with one of Sejanus's old buddies, Satrius Secundus. So that kind of helps him in many ways. Now, it's also quoted that Macro was not too far off from being like Sejanus. In fact, he was quoted as practicing the same arts, but with superior secrecy.
Ooh.
So
he was better at scheming.
He was better at it, yeah. And so
which
because
is saying
of this,
something because
Sejanus was also pretty good at it.
Yeah.
I digress. He gets his friend in on this, and they start committing people left and right. Like, the prison fills up. And eventually, word comes out that Drusus Jr. had hand in killing Nero.
Mm-hmm.
So Tiberius tells him to be starved to death. So he sentences him to being starved to death. Drusus Jr. has a slow, agonizing death in the carcer. He's forced to eat his mattress. And Tiberius has this written down and read aloud to the Senate to strike fear.
Add insult to injury.
This is what happens when you listen to Sejanus. This was
the emperor's son, and he's knocked down so many pegs, he has to eat his own fucking mattress.
And die.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where Tiberius was already paranoid. He was already paranoid. He was already thinking people are plotting against him. And to have his main man be proven that he was plotting against him he's like, no holds barred. Yeah. We're going after all of you.
Yeah.
And he was pissed. So, he kills Drusus, and then the prisons get so full that in 33 CE, they order for there to be mass executions.
Instead of letting people out, they just said,
no,
kill them.
The prison's too full, kill them. And because there was no mourning allowed, people could not mourn for the dead.
Oh my gosh. So it was a decree. It was no mourning until an indefinite.
It gets worse. He lifts the decree, finds out who's mourning, has their families killed, and them killed. He fills up the prisons again.
What the hell?
Tacitus said that there was not a single day that went by without an execution, not even New Year's Day.
Wow.
It was that bloody of a time.
Something in Roman.
Yeah. It was that bloody of a time. And now, so, eventually this comes to pass. This is kind of like Tiberius's big example of don't fuck with me.
Essentially, yeah.
And, Tiberius eventually dies. He's in his 70s.
Well, he's been dying for the past 50 years.
Right. Truly. Well, and then, of course, there's the whole thing with Caligula rises to power. Caligula actually goes after some of the nobles that got by because Sejanus used to humiliate Caligula. He was trying to with Nero to get people to shun him and making fun of his sexual preferences and things. And Caligula's like, oh no, I did not forget who you were.
Yeah.
You're also gonna get killed.
So Caligula essentially witnessed these mass killings, these mass power grabs.
Yep.
Mass essentially slinging dicks around. And so that was his early days. And then later he'll become emperor himself. Mm-hmm. And then, that kind of explains quite a bit of Caligula to me.
Right.
Not gonna lie.
Yeah, he did not have a great, upbringing with all of this. Despite all of this, this is generally the gist of it. There was this huge, witch hunt.
Mm-hmm.
There is one person who was accused and of the equestrian class that was able to talk his way out of this.
How? Who?
He was the realest of the real. And the only way he got out of this was by speaking the truth. And I'm going to read you the passage out of Tacitus of his speech.
Mm-hmm.
The man's name was Marcus Terentius. And he was also, a Roman knight. He was of the equestrian class.
Mm-hmm. But not a Praetorian?
I don't know. I don't think he was. I don't think he was.
He was in the armed forces, but not...
Right. So
in the Secret Service.
Meanwhile, all of these nobles and senators were being like, oh yeah, no, I never supported Sejanus. I don't know what you're talking about. They were being little bitches about it.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Terentius was the only one who was openly real about all of the goings-on with Sejanus. And this was his speech after he was put on trial.
Mm-hmm.
He said, in my position, it is perhaps less to my advantage to acknowledge than to deny the charge. Still, whatever is to be the issue of the matter, I shall admit that I was the friend of Sejanus, that I anxiously sought to be such, and was delighted when I was successful. I had seen him, his father's colleague, in the command of the Praetorian cohorts, and subsequently combining the duties of civil and military life. His kinsfolk and connections were loaded with honors. Intimacy with Sejanus was in every case a powerful recommendation to the emperor's friendship. Those, on the contrary, whom he hated, had to struggle with danger and humiliation. I take no individual as an instance. All of us who had no part in his last design, I mean to defend at the peril of myself alone. It was really not Sejanus of Volsini. It was a member of the Claudian and Julian houses in which we had taken a position by his marriage alliance, and it was your son-in-law, Caesar, your partner in the consulship, the man who administered your political functions, whom we courted. It is not for us to criticize one whom may rise above all others, or your motives for so doing. Heaven has entrusted you with the supreme decision of affairs, and for us is left the glory of obedience. And again, we see what takes place before our eyes, who it is on whom you bestow riches and honors, who are the most powerful to help or to injure. That Sejanus was such, no one would deny. To explore the prince's secret thoughts, or any of his hidden plans, is forbidden, a dangerous thing, nor does it follow that one could reach them. Do not, senators, think only of Sejanus's last day, but of the last 16 years of his power. We actually adored a Satirius and a Pomponius. To be known even to his freedmen and hall porters was thought something very grand. Mm-hmm. What then is my meaning? Is this an apology meant to be offered for all without diffidence and discrimination? No, it is to be restricted with proper limits. Let plots against the state and murderous designs against the emperor be punished. As for friendship and its obligations, the same principle must acquit both of you, Caesar and us.
Exactly. That's the thing. It's like, oh, how did he get away? He was real. He said, guys,
you liked him, I liked him, we all liked him. He was the best friend of the emperor.
We didn't know what he was doing behind closed doors against Tiberius.
Yeah. So you're gonna look at me and you're gonna say that you didn't want to be his friend too? You didn't want to be rubbing elbows with the emperor? You're lying.
You have power, you had power, that means you rubbed elbows with this guy. Come on.
Yeah. He was real, and for that, he did not have to die for it.
And for that, his name lives on as well.
In my heart, as well as many, historians.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's just a very interesting situation. So that is the end of the life and times of Sejanus.
Insanity. I loved it.
But let's have, discussion. What did you think?
It was crazy, and it felt like it was all like, I now understand when you were reading it and you were like, I feel like I'm taking so many notes because everything is connected, but also how the hell would I have known that this was going to be connected 15 years down the line?
Truly. I mean, it's so hard to condense this story, and there's so many sources competing. He does this, he does that, no, he does this. So, I highly recommend that if anybody wants to have a general overview of the life of Sejanus and get all the dirty details with some well-researched, conclusions, I would highly recommend checking out John McHugh's Sejanus, Regent of Rome book. That was very comprehensive, but you can get any of this information from primary sources too. Yeah. I really read up on Tacitus, on Cassius Dio. There's so many different sides to this story.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It was presented so wonderfully. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
This is the hot goss that I need.
It brings a lot to be said about.
I was captivated. I was appalled. You saw my chin was on the ground many times.
It's a very dramatic story, and for that reason, it does get told, fairly often, but not often enough, I don't think, for how interesting it is.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, it has a lot to say about the Praetorian Guard and how the power of networking.
Exactly, and also how interconnected it was, because I didn't know this man, but I know a bunch of things now that he is connected to that I know for base knowledge about the Roman Empire. I mean, Caligula is connected to him.
Yes.
And so it kind of...
Augustus is connected to him through his father.
I never thought I would understand the mind of Caligula. I'm not saying that I know it now.
There's a lot more that fucked up Caligula, but this is just one piece of the big pie.
But also, imagine that you see mass executions. Your grandfather is ordering these. Your grandfather's best friend was just executed and everything.
And to be in the mind of Tiberius, too.
And then you're going to become leader.
Yeah.
In your later life. Not even your best friends are your allies.
No, you trust no one. And in the mind of Tiberius, he was already super paranoid, super done mentally with being emperor at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is just like, oh my God, like my best friend, like, and, you know, I don't want to put words in their mouth saying he was his best friend, but like they called him, he is quoted, and I believe it was Tacitus or Dio, they said he called him his partner in his toils.
Yeah.
And that to me is brotherhood, and that is friendship.
Well, it's
have someone do that to you.
Behind closed doors is something very, you know, could be very different, but it's all about what the public sees, what the image is, and the
public
projected.
were told to revere him. Yes. His birthday was a holiday.
Yes. And what was expected. And so with that, I mean, it's like now modern day when it's like, would I say that Elon is Trump's best friend? No, I don't know that. But they sure do portray it.
But they're partners to the same cause. They're partners in each other's toils.
Yes, they sure do portray a buddy.
And it goes a lot to say too about old versus new money. Cause like, Sejanus is projected as this kind of like new money. Like novus homo, a new man is what they called it. Like that's up and coming. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people were breaking into this up and coming kind of genre, and the old money didn't like it.
Yeah.
He was kind of making a name for himself, and eventually it got him killed.
Old money always hates when new money comes in. But then it's like, honey, 2 generations ago, you were new money.
Yeah. There's just so much. There's so much.
I feel like I need a cigarette after that.
Truly, I think it's just such a very interesting case in history. The fact too that he experienced that, you know, total depletion of anything that had his name on it, and yet we still know about him.
Literally,
is crazy. And we're still finding things about him too.
That's what I was amazed at when you said that it was a decree that everything with his name was destroyed.
Yeah.
I was like, and yet here we are.
And yet here we are.
Because that's the thing that throughout history, if the people of the time want your name erased from it, that means that all memories are erased. You are never remembered. And that is the only thing that you can guarantee after you die, is that your memory lives on.
Yeah.
And so to do that's just someone. Even more of like a twist.
Yeah, he was considered what I think is called a hostus, which is like an enemy of the state after this point. So anybody associated with him or anybody, you were
killed.
Done. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. I apologize. This will probably be a lengthier episode, but so worth it, I feel.
I feel like it was very worth it. You had me hanging on every word. I loved it. Thank you so much, Des. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. And I hope that you stick around for more like this.
Yeah, if you like this, follow us on where all podcasts are presented, and also on our YouTube channel.
Yes, and if you have any questions or any what's that called?
Comments? There's tons of things to add to this. So if you have any suggestions, if you have any fun tidbits, there's tons of fun little tidbits I didn't have time to include in this episode. So if you want to comment below with your most fun tidbit about Sejanus down below, if you know it.
And you can always contact us at historianspod@gmail.com. That's historians with a Y, pod, P-O-D. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week. And we hope that you join us for our next episode. It will be mine.
Woohoo! I'm looking forward to it.
I think that you'll be very excited about it.
Sweet.
It's not excited. I feel like you'll just be like, work.
Work.
And when it comes to #work with an E, Desi gets excited about it.
I sure do.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.